address.
As with women to whom he was not married.
Give us in public your own view towards alcohol and whether you yourself have any alcohol problem.
I have none, Senator. I'm a man of some discipline.
Isn't there any decency left in the Senate? When do we stop the character assassination?
After a week of emotional debate, the Senate voted close to party lines to reject the Tower nomination. It was the first time in United States history that a new president's cabinet nominee was denied. Bush's second choice to head the Defense Department was Representative Richard Cheney, who was quickly confirmed.
You'll do great.
But the scandals in Congress were not over yet. Next on the hit list was the ranking Democrat, Speaker of the House, Jim Wright, who was targeted for ethics violations. In April, special counsel Richard Phelan released a report which concluded that the Speaker violated House rules concerning gifts and outside income in 69 separate incidents. Although he insisted that no rules had been broken, Wright resigned.
Republicans, please don't get it in your head you need to get somebody else because of John Tower. Democrats, please don't feel that you need to get somebody on the other side because of me. All of us in both political parties must resolve to bring this period of mindless cannibalism to an end. There's been enough of it.
Also in 1989, two controversial Supreme Court decisions sent Americans pouring into the streets in protest. In June, the Supreme Court ruled that burning the American flag as a form of protest was a right protected by the Constitution. Some Americans maintained that the flag was a sacred symbol and called for a constitutional amendment protecting Old Glory from any form of desecration.
I have 3 brothers that gave their life for America, so I can't take it when they burn the flag.
The opposition, whose patriotism was called into question, feared the consequences of putting any constitutional limits on the freedom of speech.
I still think you have to keep the right, though, of freedom of speech, and I think if some people, for them, it means burning the flag, then I think they should be allowed to do it.
In a Senate vote, the amendment failed. And in another controversial decision, the Supreme Court upheld a Missouri law prohibiting public employees from performing abortions unless the mother's life was threatened. This was the first major Supreme Court challenge to the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. In the 1980s, Leona Helmsley epitomized the hard-driven, successful career woman. And together with her husband Harry, she controlled a real estate kingdom worth close to $5 billion. But in 1989, the Helmsleys and 2 associates were indicted on federal charges of tax evasion.
The tax evasion and fraud scheme involved in the indictment charges that millions of dollars in personal expenditures for the Helmsley mansion and estate, known as Donnellon Hall, were charged falsely to business entities. The defendants are alleged to have created phony books and records to make it falsely appear that personal expenditures were in fact business expenditures, and those personal expenditures were written off to those businesses.
On August 30th, 1989, Leona Helmsley was found guilty of failing to pay more than $1 million in taxes. During the trial, her maid testified that Mrs. Helmsley once remarked that only the little people pay taxes. Several months later, the so-called Queen of Mean was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Her husband Harry was indicted on the same charges, but was ruled unfit to stand trial. When year by year 1989 continues, we'll see how the forces of change that transformed the Soviet Union and several other Eastern Bloc countries